Chapter 6. Greta gave the command to stabilize the ship first, then to reverse it. McCool replied from the engine room that neither maneuver was, at the moment, possible. The collision and the shearing had caused malfunctions in the control circuits. He did not know what the trouble was, but the electronic trouble scanner was searching through the circuits. A moment later, he called back to say that the device was itself not operating properly, and that the troubleshooting would have to be done by his men until the device had been repaired. McCool was disturbed. He could not account for the breakdown because, theoretically, there should have been none. Even the impact and loss of the forepart should not have resulted in loss of circuit operation. Greta told him to do what he could. Meanwhile, the ship was tumbling and was obviously catching up with the vast corpse. There had been another inexplicable interchange of energy, position, and momentum, and the Sleipnir and Mrs. Wellington were going to collide. Greta unstrapped himself and began walking back and forth across the bridge. Even though the ship was cartwheeling, the internal G-field neutralized the effect for the crew. The vessel seemed level and stable, unless the star screen was looked at. When Greta watched the screen, he felt slightly queasy because he was, at times, standing upside down in relation to the corpse. Greta asked for a computation of when the collision would take place and of what part of the body the Sleipnir would strike. It might make a difference whether it struck a soft or hard part. The difference would not result in damage to the ship, but it would affect the angle and velocity of the rebound path. If the circuits were repaired before the convergence, or just after, Greta would have to know what action to take. Wong replied that he had already asked the compagator for an estimate of the area of collision if conditions remained as they were. Even as he spoke, the compagator screen displayed the answer. Greta said, "At any other time, I'd laugh. So, we will return, literally, to the womb." The card had also indicated that the nearer the ship got to Wellington, the slower was its velocity. Moreover, the relative size of the ship, as reported by radar, was decreasing in direct proportion to its proximity to the body. Gomez said, "I think we've come under the influence of that woman, as if she'd become a planet and had captured a satellite. Us. She doesn't have any gravitational attraction or any charge in relation to us, but there are other factors," Greta said to him. "Maybe there are spatial relations which, in this space, may be the equivalent of gravity." The Sleipnir was now so close that the body entirely filled the star screen when the ship was pointed towards it. First, the enormous head came into view. The blood-clotted and bulging eyes stared at them. The nose slid by like a Brobdingnagian guillotine. The mouth grinned at them as if it would enjoy gulping them down. Then, the neck. A diorite column left exposed by the erosion of softer rock. The cleavage of the blackened Himalayan breasts. The navel. The eye of a hurricane. Then she went out of sight, and the secondary and primary, and the gray-shrouded giants far off, whirled across the screen. Greta used the all stations to tell the non-bridge personnel what was happening. "As soon as McCool locates the trouble, we will be on our way out. We have plenty of power left, enough to blast our way out of 100 corpses. Sit tight, don't worry. It's just a matter of time." He spoke with a cheerfulness he did not feel, although he had not lied to them, nor did he expect any reaction, positive or negative. They must be as numb as he. Their minds, their entire nervous systems, were boggling. The compagator showed a corrected impact prediction. Because of the continuing decrease in size of the vessel, it would strike the corpse almost dead center in the navel. A minute later, the screen predicted impact near the coccyx. A third display revised that to collision with the top of the head. A fourth changed that to a strike to the lower part of the front of the right leg. Greta called Van Voorden again. The physicist's face shot up from the surface of Greta's wrist console, but was stationary on the auxiliary bulkhead screen. This gave a larger view and showed Van Voorden looking over his wrist console at a screen on his cabin bulkhead. It offered the latest impact report in large burning letters.
Like the handwriting on the wall in the days of King Belshazzar,
Van Voorden said.
And I am a Daniel come to my judgment. So, we're going to hit her leg, eh? Minnie, tickle up her shin.
Greta stared uncomprehendingly at him, then cut him off. A few seconds later, he understood Van Voorden's pun. He did not wonder at the man's levity at a moment so grave. It was a means of relieving his deep anxiety and bewilderment. It might also mean that he was already cracking up, since it was out of character with him. But Greta could do nothing for him at that moment. As the Sleipnir neared the corpse, the ship continued to shrink. However, the dwindling was not at a steady rate, nor could the times of shrinkage be predicted. It operated in spurts of from 2 to 30-second duration at regular intervals. And then it became evident that, unless some new factor entered, the Sleipnir would spin into the gaping mouth. While the head rotated downward, the ship would pass through the great space between the lips. And so it was. On the star screen, the lower lip, a massive ridge, wrinkled with mountains and pitted with valleys, appeared. Flecks of lipstick floated by, black-red Hawaiis. A tooth, like a jagged skyscraper, dropped out of sight. The Sleipnir settled slowly into the darkness. The wall shot away and upwards. The blackness outside knotted. Only a part of the gray sky was visible during that point of the cartwheel when the forepart of the star screen was directed upwards. Then the opening became a thread of gray, a strand, and was gone. Strangely, or was it so odd? The officers and crew lost their feeling of dissociation. Greta's stomach expanded with relief. The dreadful fragmenting was gone. He now felt as if something had been attached, or reattached, to his navel. Rube, the psychology officer, reported that he had taken a survey of 1 out of 50 of the crew, and each described similar sensations. Despite this, the personnel were free of only one anxiety, and were far from being out of danger. The temperature had been slowly mounting ever since the ship had spun off the secondary and had headed towards the corpse. The power system and air conditioning had stabilized at 62.22 degrees Celsius for a while. But the temperature of the hull had gone upwards at a geometric progression, and the outer hull was now 2,500 degrees Kelvin. There was no danger of it melting as yet. It could resist up to 56,000 degrees Kelvin. The air conditioning demanded more, and more power, and after 30 minutes ship's time, Greta had to let the internal temperature rise to 66.5 degrees Celsius to ease the load. Greta ordered everybody into spacesuits, which could keep the wearers at a comfortable temperature. Just as the order was carried out, McCool reported that he had located the source of malfunction.
"The Wellington woman did it!" he shouted. "She sure took care of us! She inserted a monolith subparticle switch in the circuits. The switch had a timer, which operated the switch after a certain time had elapsed. It was only a coincidence that the circuits went blank right after we failed to get back into our world."